Mr. Leach, I had the debate you had with my sister. You know what worries me is what she has alluded to, the contestation between the resources. I just don't know how this can be resolved, because one cannot shy away or move away from the fact that the elephant in the room is that our health system, it's failing or has failed. Whether the certificate of need is the necessary panacea to resolve it, I don't know. Whether transfer of resources to those far-flung remote areas can help, as the government says, may be good, may not be good. But sitting as I am here, it's difficult for me to shrug my shoulders and say, because people in the city center or in the urban areas have access to those resources, they're better off than the people in the far-flung areas. I don't think that's what the submission you're making. Am I correct?
What I'm making. Justice Mathopo, I'm not making that submission. I'm not submitting to this court, and I would never make that submission to this court, that I'm all right, Jack, you can look after yourself. That's not the proposition. But with respect, pregnant within the proposition that you did put to me, Justice Mathopo, is the answer to the conundrum that the court is facing. And it also lies in the proposition that Justice Savage put to me, because both those questions or propositions are concerned about resources. What we're concerned about when we talk about resources is we're concerned about things like hospital beds. We're concerned about things like MRI machines. We're concerned about things like access to medications. And being in a rural area or being in an urban area doesn't necessarily mean that we have access to resources. And having a concentration of resources in one area doesn't mean that all of the people in that area have access to those resources. But what the certificate of need provisions try and do is they don't try and divvy up the resources. They don't try and make private use its resources in the expenditure of satisfying access to need. What the certificate of need provisions do, and that was why I started with the definition and how it relates to health services, is it tries to take people and it tries to socially engineer where people must be.
Sorry to interrupt you. If you take the situation in Johannesburg, in Gauteng, for example, we have many hospitals, and those hospitals are ill-equipped. And I'm just thinking about whether we need to relocate people elsewhere. The people in Johannesburg would say, we need those services here. If you go to Chris Hani Hospital or go to Tembisa Hospital, there is a complete failure of any health facilities. We are also suffering. Now, what I don't understand is, or what I need clarification on is, if that certificate is to be implemented, let's locate it in Johannesburg, in Gauteng, for example. Baragwanath Hospital, the situation there is dire. You go there, you don't come back alive, if you're lucky. And the problem is, could one say the problem is the certificate of need would resolve the problem, or the problem would be the resources? And if it is the resources, then as government, we are probably not doing enough to address those resource issues to try and ameliorate the problems that the people are facing on the ground. And if that is the issue, then the certificate will not even help at all.
Just,
Or will it help?
Justice Mathopo, with the greatest of respect, that is absolutely correct. The department has not shown in its 100-odd pages of answering affidavit and annexures, the department has not shown how the certificate of need provisions will address that question of resources and the lack of resources in public healthcare facilities. Because even if the Mill Park Hospital is refused permission to install an MRI machine, that doesn't mean that Netcare, who are the owners of the Mill Park Hospital, will install an MRI machine in Baragwanath Hospital. That's not what the certificate of need provisions provide for.
Well, let's just forget about Mill Park Netcare. Let's look at what government ought to do apart from Netcare and what government has done or has not done. If Baragwanath Hospital runs or does not have the MRI scan, will the blame be laid at the door of Netcare, or is the blame be laid at the door of the government for its failure to address these core problems that as a people we don't have those resources? And why don't we have those resources? Are the funds properly allocated to cater for those exigencies, apart from what private sector would do? As a government, have we done enough?
Justice Mathopo, with respect, the allegations that are made in Haas's founding affidavit are that government hasn't done enough. But let's assume, for present purposes, that government has maxed out its resources. Let's assume that they've efficiently utilized all of their resources and that the simple truth of the matter is that the piggy bank has run dry. Let's accept that. It still doesn't answer the question of how refusing a certificate of need to somebody else in Johannesburg is going to solve that problem at Baragwanath. And that's where we seem to be passing one another like ships in the night. Because the respondents are saying, by refusing a certificate of need, or by the Director General looking at the 13 items in section 36(3), by the Director General looking at those and geographically relocating private individuals, we will solve that problem. And everybody's going, how? It's not a facetious question. It's a question that says, how? How does this address the problem? And there is no answer to that in the department's answering affidavits. So when the 8 applicants say to the department and say to this court that what you're really proposing to do is ride roughshod over numerous rights in the constitution of individuals, but you can't demonstrate to me how that's going to solve any of the problems, and you can't demonstrate to me how, by refusing a hospital in Johannesburg, a hospital's magically going to spring up in an uneconomically viable area in the northern province, then why are we having this debate? Why are we having the debate, says Haasa and the other 7 applicants, when you need to show us how this is going to work? That was why I took the court in my initial address to chapter 10, because it's not a norms and standards thing. The health professions are regulated, and the proposition was raised earlier about, I think it might have been Justice Turan who asked about the Legal Practice Council. The health professions are regulated by their own custos mori. They are the people who sit and look at whether or not a doctor has misconducted herself. As the court pleases, Justice Mathopo.